the second half of our listing stuff, our listing conversion class, and talking about the 5 stages of the listing. And so, going through those scripts and dialogues, and then, talking about pricing. So I probably will rant a little bit about pricing, just because I think it's really important right now that we price things properly, more than ever. It's always been important, but I think it's really important right now that we get in front of that, because, sellers have a need, right? If they're putting their hand up to put their house on the market, they have a need. And we need to, as an industry, we need to brush up on our skills on having those difficult conversations. Yesterday in Slam, one of the agents said that they actually have a stager that comes out, and for $150, this lady comes out and she's the bad guy. So she tells people if their house smells or if it needs some, work or whatever. So it kind of takes it off the agent to be the bad guy. So, so I love that. Right. So, cause there are times like, Diana was sharing with us, she's got a house that smells like cat urine. And so, those are difficult. That I just closed one that had a smoke smell. So, those are conversations we have to have with people and be brutally honest with them. All right, so let's jump in though. What are the 5 stages? So the first stage is the pre-listing activities. So are you okay? We're good. I think Roberta just jumped in. So the pre-conversation. So this is our discovery phase, right? So asking the questions. You guys are going to get in the materials of pre-listing questions to ask. I don't think that those are the be all end all. I think there's more, and I'll comment on that when we get to that slide. So asking the right questions. I think it's important that we ask, should they have more than one mortgage? Asking those questions, digging into. And I think another question to ask is, tell me about the last time you sold a home. Because if they're first time home sellers, they don't have a bar except for what they're hearing from everybody else around them, right? I have a yellow Jeep, and I never saw yellow Jeeps until I owned a yellow Jeep. And I thought I was pretty special to have a yellow Jeep. Well, I see yellow Jeeps everywhere now. And so that's your reticular activator. And so when we talk about putting our house up for sale, everybody and their brother comes out of the woodwork and starts giving advice. And so we have to be mindful of that reticular activator and what people are hearing. And then talking about the pricing tools, we do have a pricing class that's all we talk about. And then confirming the appointments. We talked a little bit about that last week, the script on that. If one person that's a part of the decision-making process is unavailable, try to reschedule so that you can get both those people. And if they're not physically here, jump on Zoom. Don't be afraid to use Zoom to do a presentation with someone. Getting your mind in the right spot, right? Clearing your mind of all distractions and focusing on what's the outcome that we want. I skipped one. Prepare the listing agreement. So having just a template, I love that Remax Professionals inside of SkySlope Forms has a template done for us. So when I go to create a new listing, I just got to click that box that says use this template, and everything preloads for me. So yeah, Monica.
On the name, like when you're meeting with people, not just the name and who they title or how you have your name titled, but the family and the decision makers. I had one deal that we had to allow the seller to cancel because the family wouldn't let the mom sell. So if the mom's all by herself and has those kids, and get them all there because it killed the deal once we got under contract.
That's a good point. Yeah. So, I'm sure we've all had situations like that. And even if, it's a trust situation and you got multiple siblings involved and, how to make those decisions. So, that's a good point. Making sure everybody who's involved is on the same page. So prepare, you could we used to do this back in the day, right? Fill out all the stuff, not fill it out, but have everything with us, right? Now with technology, you could still probably have everything preloaded, right, and ready to go. And then now it's just a matter of emailing it out to them. Get back to the next one is getting your head in the right spot, right? Visualize the outcome that you want. 3/4 of what we do in this industry is all what happens up here, right? What happens in our mind. So we can either think it's going to be a great day or we can think it's going to be a shitty day. I was talking to one of our agents last week, and she said to me that she has to brace herself because the market's going to be hard. And I said, what? Oh, wait a second. And so we just came out of, in my opinion, one of the hardest markets ever. And I lived through the bubble and the crash. And so I've never in 25 years had to write 7 contracts to get one deal accepted. And the only reason that deal went through is we were a backup. We were a backup offer, and the first buyer ended up not being able to qualify for the bloated price that they offered on the house, right? And so, and I knew the agent, and I kind of gave her crap. I said, you should have just taken my offer, right? Instead of messing around with the conventional financing. So I've never had to work that hard, right? So when we say it's going to be hard, I disagree. I think that this is a market where, especially those of us, and all of you have, years, except for Janae, she's got experience in the industry, just not necessarily with the license. We've all been here a minute. We know how to navigate this balanced market, right? So 3/4 is what goes on up here. Arrive on time. I can't stress that enough, how important that is to be responsible with your time. So the next message is setting the boundaries for the win-win relationship. So that's the first message. So it can't be a win for you just to take the listing so that you get leads off of that. And it can't be a win for them to get to put the house on the market at a price that they think it's going to sell for. Unfortunately, my big daddy fell through, but it's going to fall through, but they were priced at $772 and accepted an offer at $712. That's a pretty big difference in price. Right. And I have a feeling it's once this falls through, it's not going to sell for $712. It's going to go for less than that. Right. So then the second message is goals, plans, and strategies are GPS. So you want to uncover their needs, help them prioritize those needs, and then review the CMA and the comps. I had a guy years ago in Tempe. He was a big Dave Ramsey guy. And I had sold the house to them, and they had a couple pets and a toddler. The house needed carpet, needed paint. And I suggested, they were relocating. I said, why don't you get the wife and the kids, gone, the wife and the kid and the pets out of here. We'll get the carpet and paint done. And I had suggested $5,000 more than what he was thinking the house was going to get. And he was super excited. Big David Ramsey guy. It's like, oh, I've been a bachelor and since I got married, and I'm going to sit in my underwear and play video games. This is great. And so that 5 days later, the same man who was all jacked up about getting to play video games and drink beer in his underwear was a mess. He was emotionally distraught. He was like, I miss my kid. I miss my wife. I just need to get this house sold. And so when we talk about priorities and uncovering the needs and wants and helping them prioritize that, on this day, the priority was making $5,000 more. But 5 days later, priority was getting back with his family. And so we have to pay attention to those things that people say, right? And help them uncover those needs. We didn't know that he was going to emotionally break down, right? And I don't think he was prepared for it either. And so we had to switch tactics, right? I did end up getting him the $5,000 more, but so it did work out. But we had to strategize, right? On how to get the house sold quicker than what he was anticipating. And so we have to pay attention to that, because sometimes those needs and priorities will change as we move into the process. The next message is to cover the mutual expectation. I mentioned last week that you guys were going to get the roles, the my role and your role, just like in the buyer conversion class. There's one for sellers as well. Okay. Then we want to gain the agreement on those roles and then close for the relationship. And then lastly, post conversation activity. So what are the objections? Typically, the objections are price, term, commission, right? So what are those objections? And if you do a good enough job throughout the conversation and allow them to discover what's unique about you and what you bring to the table, you should be able to eliminate most of those objections, because we talk about cost is only an issue in the absence of value. So Deb, if you over deliver, right, and we over deliver in that presentation and wow them, we get to commissions, shouldn't be an issue. Right. And so I had somebody recently ask me if I'd reduce my commission. I was like, nope. And he was like, okay. So right. Because some agents will, Monica, but that doesn't mean you will. Right. We're having to work our butts off. And if you're having to spend more money on additional things to expose that home, better not be reducing that commission. Right. And I think sellers are going to move back into that understanding that it does cost more money to sell the house today. Right. All right, so stage 1. So the purpose of stage 1, let me get I feel off because I don't know where I am in my materials here. So give me a second. Maybe not. Okay, well, all right. We're going to stick with PowerPoint. Okay, so the purpose of the pre-conversation activities is we want to differentiate yourself from the competition. Most people believe that all realtors are the same, and we're not. right? Just have one transaction with someone in the MLS and you know that not everyone's the same, right? So we want to add value to your proposition and then increase your referral business. And so I do believe that come January, when NAR dues are up, that we're going to see a drop off of agents, more so than normal Januaries, right? Now I do know that there are people coming back into coming into the industry as well, but they're people who are not learning based with the shift right now they're gonna continue to do what they've known, and it's not gonna work. And so they're going to get out of the industry, right? And so continuing to be learning based, right? Show up, continue to add stuff to your value proposition. I think it's important that we track the market. I have you guys all set up on a search. So every time you list a home, I get an email, and I've been paying attention to all the price reductions that have been happening. Right. So check your neighborhood, right? Set yourself up on a search in an area so that you can pay attention to what those trends are. If you can show up to see Tina Tamaru speak, go watch her speak. She's a wealth of knowledge, right? Just be careful what you're putting in your head too. You don't want to get caught up in the sensationalized conversations or articles that are out there, because to me, this is a great time in real estate, right? Buyers have options. Yeah, the interest rates suck, but 13% of the population still moves. So there's still a lot of great opportunity out there. So the pre-listing question. So in your guys' materials, you have this form. This is on page 15. I would add to this. So, because this is basically verifying things about the house, right? I would add things in here, especially if I can figure out what kind of disc personality style they are. I would add that in here. It doesn't say anything about how much they owe on the property, so I want to ask that, and I want to know that they have more than one mortgage. I want to know that, and I also think the other question is that I mentioned earlier is, tell me about the last time you sold a home. Because if they sold during the short sale era, right, I want to know that. I want to know what their previous experience was, right? So I would add things to this. And of course, like I said, you look at it and what are you currently asking? Having a form like this, though, is really great for risk management, because we're asking the same questions over and over again, right? We have a system, right? Like McDonald's, we have a system that we apply. Anything that you do 3 or more times in your business needs a system. So this document on page 15 is a great place to start, right? If you don't currently have one. So I still have access to Nate's that we created many years ago. So if you guys want that, shoot me an email. It's pretty comprehensive as well, with additional questions to ask. And then have those on your stations. We used to have pink and green, right? The pink ones were for buyers, the green ones were for sellers. And so we had NCR copies. So whoever took the lead, filled out, and then the manager got the copy, so we can make sure that lead got followed up on and got put into a CRM. So I'm not saying go out and make NCRs, but have a system, right? Have a system that you follow every time, so that you're guaranteeing that you're asking the right questions that will tee you up for success in that listing appointment. Okay.
So Sarah, do you send this with the pre-listing package and just pick it up when you know?
No, this would be a question when you on the intake, Janae. So when they call, you want to fill, when you get the lead and they say, hey, I want to have you come out, this would be the time that you would use this.
Okay.
So once you get licensed, if it's you that's getting that call, you could be the one filling it out. Okay, you just can't ask these questions right now because you don't have a license.
Yeah,
but once you do, you could ask, have that. So I would make this available, wherever you're at, right? Make sure you have copies of it. Maybe put it in your journal. So we've got copies of it available. So when you get that call, you're ready to go. So stage 2. So I'm not going to read all of these scripts to you guys, but the bolded part here is that, we want to have a conversation to see if a win-win working relationship can be created. I was talking to someone the other day and they didn't like the phrase win-win. So if you don't like the phrase win-win, come up with something else, right? A mutual amicable working relationship. I don't care. Just something that sets it up so that it's conveyed as being a partnership, right? That you guys are being partners in a goal of getting a home sold. Okay. So again, stage 2, the agenda. So we want to help them uncover their needs, discuss and agree on the most appropriate price, and then review the roles and expectations. And then the confidentiality. I actually really do like this part of the materials. When I first read this, I was like, well, that's really smart, right? That's a smart thing to say. And Roberta being a lawyer, she can chime in here that there's something very reassuring if you've ever needed a suit to stand next to you. There's something very, very comforting knowing that you can tell them anything and they have to take it to the grave, right? And so, but
I would chime in, not so much on the lawyer side, but when we took the luxury course, they emphasized your making this part of your presentation because people of wealth don't necessarily want the information spread around.
Yep.
So that's a component of that training that I've implemented into our presentations.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's true. People of affluence want their privacy. Yeah, I mean, Nate years ago had a listing that they had some crazy expensive artwork, and we had to be really careful how we marketed that home because people thieves that are out there checking that stuff. I had someone call me, this little listing I put up in Sun City. Some dude called me about the furniture. There was some patio furniture in the backyard, and he was like, "Are you selling that? I collect this stuff." I was like, "Are you a realtor?" And he was like, "No, I'm just somebody who, looks for this type of stuff." So where did he see it? Right. So he's watching the internet to pay attention to that stuff. So it was really an odd call that I got. And this is on some crappy furniture in a backyard in Sun City. You imagine someone with, $1 million worth of artwork in their house. So yeah, so I think confidentiality is a good thing to have that conversation. And then the transitional phrase, right? So moving into what a successful transaction would look like. Stage 3. So here's your script for this, for uncovering the needs and wants. This drills deep, right? It goes 3 deep with what's important about that. And then continuing on to say, what's going to make you a 10 plus, right? So a 10 and then a 10 plus. And then if they push back, right? Like why we got to do this? It's important that we go 3 deep. That's going 3 deep with things. Tell me more about that. Tell me about your previous experience. What if scenarios. You guys have heard me say the word O. O can solicit all kinds of different things. Going 3 deep really demonstrates another layer of communication, right? It literally opens up more and more communication. And we know that communication is where we falter in this business, right? Is not having good communication. And most people listen to respond. So they're not listening to actually listen. They're up here in their head formulating their response as that person's talking. So, and it's okay to pause. It's okay to take a breath and pause. And most of us don't want that awkward, weird silence, right? But it's okay to pause and say, let me gather my thoughts for a moment here, right? So that we can speak. Yeah, go ahead, Roberta.
Now this goes back to lawyer training. One of the number 1 successful methods in negotiating is to shut up.
Yep.
It's to be quiet. You say what you're going to say and then you zip it.
Yep. Yeah. What is the saying? He who speaks first loses. Is that what it is? I always mess that quote up. Something like that. I always mess it up. Yeah. And it is, right. It's uncomfortable because everybody wants to keep talking, but there's something beautiful in the silence, right? And just let them speak first. All right. So page 23, we're not going to role play, but the example here on page 23 is on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being very desirable and 1 being not desirable. What would be one thing to make the sale of your home a 10? And the example is a good price. So because we need 20 grand to put down on our next home. We feel like we would have made a good investment in 20 grand. Right? Today's house, like that's 200 grand versus 20 grand. So then continuing to go deeper with it, what would be a 10 plus, right? And then the example is that marketing and promoting the home in a professional manner, having open houses or not having open houses, right? Because some sellers don't want to have open houses. All right. So gaining the understanding of their needs. Okay. So here's your script, right? So the example is having a quick sale. And, I think that's like, it's important to get this information because we need to manage their expectations. We need to know what their expectations are. We can't just go into an appointment assuming that we know what they need. And then I think that's where a lot of agents fail, is that they go in pounding their chest thinking, I'm the realtor, I know what's best for you. And one of the most brilliant listing appointments I went on with Nate. Sorry, I'm having some allergies right now. We walked in and we toured the house. She was a recent, her husband had passed away recently, and this was the home they built and raised their children in. And we toured the house. She talked about her husband and talked about, building the house together. And we never talked about comps. We never talked about commission. We never talked about what our stats were as a team. She was a sign call. And she picked me on the website. We went on an appointment. We sat down at her kitchen table and Nate asked her one question. What's your goals and how can we help you get there? And that was it. And she shared with us what she wanted. We got up, walked to the door. She said, send me your listing agreement and tell me how to price it. It was brilliant, right? The most brilliant listing appointment I've ever been on. And, I think it's important that we ask that question. And sometimes it's not about the stats. It's not about commission. It's not about how great you are. It's, I shared this yesterday in Slam, is that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I went on, we sold that house. I sold Janet, her son a house, and then I sold her investment property. And if she ever comes back to Arizona, I'm sure I'll sell her another property. And so just from one sign call and asking that one question. Okay. So I think that's important to gain an understanding of what are their needs? What are their goals? What are their fears? Right? What are their fears? I mean, there's a lot of fear mongering going on right now. So what are their fears and their uncertainties, and how do we manage that for them? How do we tee them up, right? So that we have success. And sometimes that's the difficult conversations of, well, we're going to have to price it right. Or you have pigeons, and pigeons are really hard to get rid of. I just closed one with pigeons. And so that was something I said to them, is you have pigeons, and this is going to weigh in on what someone's going to be willing to pay for your home. And so were they happy with me? No, they were not happy when I first told them the price. But when I brought them 4 offers and it sold slightly above asking in a market where things are sitting, they were now happy. Right. And we got it closed. So, because it's one thing to list it, but it's a whole other thing. That's only part of the equation. We got to get the house sold and closed. Right. Okay. So next thing is listening. So listening is highly attractive. And it's okay. If you've ever been, we were at coach training a couple of weeks ago, and I was sitting across the way from a guy named Mike, who's a master coach. And I was talking about the REO market, and he was so engaged in my conversation with him that it almost made me a little uncomfortable, because his direct eye contact with me was unbroken. And he actually kind of leaned in a little bit as I was talking, and so that he could listen better. And it was, like I said, it was almost a little intimidating because he was so intense, but it was also very cool because I was like, this dude is really listening to me right now. Like, he is listening to everything that I'm saying. And so don't be afraid, right, to pause and to really lean in and say, okay, I'm going to pay attention to what you're saying, right? I'm going to listen, and it's okay to just stop and then formulate your thoughts after that. So one of these needs, which is the most important to you? What's the second most important? And then what's the third? Okay. And then, so if it's time, right, so we have to be out of the house in 60 days. And I think we got to go deeper with that question too. If I have to be out of here in 60 days, is that sold, right? Is that under contract, or is that out, right? Moved and gone. Okay. And then based on comps and days on market, we need to take that into consideration. There's a neighborhood in Avondale that it takes longer to sell, right? And my understanding is it's because of the location, but the homes are lovely, and they just take longer to sell. So we need to be paying attention to days on market. And I think too, we need to be paying attention, and we'll talk about this in the pricing class, but canceled and expireds, right? We haven't had to, Monica. We haven't had to look at those because everything that we've assumed everything's flying off the shelves. But in reality, 25% of the market fails to sell, even in a crazy market. And that's because of pricing condition. And so we need to be checking those things, because there's a script that we talk about, is that there have been people who lived before us, right? And they've tried this higher price and they've failed. We're getting ready to go into the biggest expired month of the year in December, because everybody writes 12/31 as their expiration date. So, that might be something to think about, is capturing some of those, those listings that will be coming available, because those people still have a need to sell in most cases, right? They've just been failed by their agent. The reminder to on page 25 is that we want to always address priority number 1 first, right? So if that's price or time, we want to address it first and get in front of it. So it's justification. So here's your transitional dialogue here. So if telling me, 60 days is your number 1 priority. Okay. So then the 2 components is price and exposure. And if you guys do a good job of pricing and you use the MLS to the best of its ability, meaning that you fill out all of the features, you have good directions, you put a lockbox on the house and all in all cases that you can, and you have good write-up, and you have professional photography, that is good exposure. right? It will be exposed. And then you can go further with, your megaphone stuff, your Facebook, sending it out to your database. Why not blast a new listing to your database? You have no idea who in your database might spur their thoughts, or they have a kid who's looking, or, somebody, whoever, right? It doesn't matter. It's another way that you can expose that listing. Next question is pricing, right? So let me ask you, do you think a pricing strategy is important? And I think that's a great question, that if there's anything you guys take from this class, is that question, right? Do you think a pricing strategy is important? Our words matter. And so pricing strategy, that's very tactical, right? It means that Monica has a plan, right? She's got a plan that's going to win. And so what was it yesterday that Holly shared in Slam? Was it strategy, or it was a marketing strategy is what she shared, right?
She used marketing strategy. That's a word we use in ours also.
Yeah.
Not
So
marketing, but strategy to getting it to sold.
Yeah. Strategy, or I even like the word tactical too. I think the word tactical is kind of implies that, it's a plan, right? So your words matter, right? So find sexy ways to say things that are different, right? I shared yesterday that somebody, it was actually Nate, who lost a listing because the agent that they interviewed, the second agent they interviewed, referred to the MLS in some fancy way, some sexy way. And so find ways to say things that are different, right? That because your words matter. I have a gal in Texas that she has a program that's called her Make Ready program. And in fact, she does something else for staging. God, what is it that she says? She has a really cool phrase for staging. And I told her on both of those, she needs to trademark them, because the Make Ready program, I mean, that sounds cool, right? And so don't go steal her thing, because I've told her to trademark that. But she's got another one. I'll have to find out and share with you guys what she calls her staging, because she has a really cool way of saying staging. And so your words matter, right? So find ways that are different to stand out with that mean the same thing. Next week at the meeting, Nate and I are going to share the shift with you with Workman, and they're really big about finding ways that sounds different, right? So same old phrase, but make it sound cool. Okay, so oops, we go back. Hold on, I want to go back there. So the pricing game is all about justification. Okay, so this script is really good. So and I think it's important where the highlighted parts are now. To me, leaving your money on the table is simply unacceptable. That gains trust, right? That they don't think you're just coming in here to try to sell it quick and, get paid fast. And so I don't want to leave your money on the table. What my script has been with the last couple of listings that I've talked to is, I've got these two coming up that I have no idea if I'm going to be able to sell them. But she's my number one top 50. This will be like the 8th and 9th transaction I've done with them. And I said to her, I know that, when we talked 6 months ago, the market was different and we had one price, but it's changed. And I would rather be honest with you today and have you be disappointed today than be mad at me in 6 months because I couldn't get the job done. And she was very appreciative of that, right? Because I said, and then further, I said, I would rather bring you multiple offers and have it sell for above asking than have to chase the price down. And so people want multiple offers, right? Sellers want multiple offers. And here's the thing, you guys, is that if you're getting no showings, the market is talking to you, right? It's saying that it's overpriced. And you can go in and find an MLS, how many times that home has been searched and how many times it's shown up in a portal, how many times it's been liked and how many times it's been blocked. And to me, the amount of times it's been blocked, that's the critical data you need to give to your seller, right? Because the consumer is literally saying, no, I don't want to see this house. And so the market talks to you. And that's where when people say, well, I don't want to underprice it, I don't want to sell it for less than it's worth. That's impossible, because what happens when it's a perceived value is we create frenzy and excitement, and then the price goes up, right? So it's impossible to leave money on the table if you price it right to begin with. Does that make sense? So that's kind of been my strategy, is I want to make like a good deal and then create the buzz around it. Okay. I did that on the Sun City house. And that was another one. I was like, oh, good Lord, I don't know if this thing's going to sell, because it was vintage. It is vintage. And I ended up with, I had a lot of lowball offers, but I ended up getting $5,000 over asking on an owner occ. Actually, this person's going to come in and renovate it for themselves. So, because I thought for sure it'd be an investor that bought it. It's going to be an owner occupant. So again, creating that buzz around it. All right, so expireds. This is a script around the expireds. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we have a whole class on expireds and for sale by owners. So I'm going to skip through that one. All right, so page 28. So CMAs, okay, so this advocates not sending a big 40-page CMA. I know some of you are probably using Toolkit CMA or RPR, and that's okay. I think what I like about Toolkit is it's really branded to Remax, so I like that, but you still have to implement the comps, right? You still have to go in there and put that in there. What we teach in the pricing class, and even in this particular dialogue here, is 3, right? 3 actives, 3 pendings, 3 sold, 3 canceled. Because that's what an appraiser is going to look for, right? So not overwhelming them. Now, when I do CMAs, I want to look at the whole neighborhood. So I want to know everything that's sold in the last, 6 months, 90 days. Because the reason being is if I go on that appointment and they talk about Jim and Sally's house, that might not be a comp that I would use, but they know Jim and Sally, it's going to throw me off my game if I don't know about Jim and Sally. So then I can educate them and say, here's Jim and Sally's sale, but I wouldn't use this as a comp because ... right? So I want to have a view of everything that's happening in the neighborhood so that I can understand the trends that exist in the neighborhood, right? And then I'm going to winnow deeper with that. So, the whole script here. So there are three basic sheets in the real estate world: the sold sheet, the dream sheet, and the expired sheet. The sold sheet represents what we can expect to get in this area at this time. 100% of the people on this sheet have already achieved what you're trying to achieve. They've sold their home. The dream sheet is our competition that tells us what people are hoping to get in this area at this time. Most people don't realize that only about 50% of the dreamers actually make it to the sold sheet the first time around. I don't know if that stat's true for us. So maybe look into that and make sure that that's accurate. I would say it's probably in a balanced market, it's probably more like 75% that make it to the sold sheet. The other 50% go into the dreaded expired sheet. This is the sheet of rejected properties that tell us what people are not willing to pay in this market. Do we want to position ourselves in a way where we're expecting to sell the home or hoping to sell the home? They're going to say expecting. Then based on the needs we've covered tonight, which sheet do you believe that we should primarily study to determine the price? They're going to say the sold sheet, right? Because they want to get their home sold. And then we're going to dig into that a little bit deeper. So things I'm probably preaching to the choir here with you guys, but you want to try to compare apples to apples, right? So single stories to single stories, unless you absolutely have to use a 2-story, right? So we want to try to get as close as possible to model match that we can. And I don't know, what are you guys seeing out there as far as sold comps? What are you seeing? So any thoughts on that? Is it just no sold comps and everything's from 90 days ago, 6 months ago? What are you seeing? I ran comps in this Big Daddy that sadly is falling out. And I thought they were priced pretty well. We still went in under asking, but I thought they were priced pretty well compared to what has sold and what's been on the market. I think what a lot of buyers are concerned about right now is what's going to happen in the future. What does 90 days look like from now? So I think we have to manage those expectations from the buyer side and the seller side. So any thoughts, you guys?
There are sold comps out there. I know the listing that I have, I'm going in every few days and just going back during the month and saying, okay, this is what sold, this is what it closed at, this is what went into pending. This is your competition. I take his mile, but then I've also been doing all of Surprise east of the 101 and saying, okay, yeah, you're number 2 in your neighborhood, but you're number 30 in Surprise as far as where you're priced. And I think that helps.
Yeah. And I heard, so Tina talked about Surprise being one of the areas that was really cool. And that things are sitting on the market. And then you got all the new construction that's happening too. So
right.
I think that's smart, Deb, to be checking that out and, constantly be looking at what's happening. So yeah. I think it's going to be interesting the next couple. I don't know how much the election really plays into people, so we'll see after November 8th if that, spurs any additional activity. So we'll see. Okay. So page 29 is your script on gaining the agreement. So looking at the sold information, can you understand where a reasonable buyer would price your home? And if they say no, share with me why you feel that way. Again, we don't want to get into dictator space. We want to say, well, tell me more. Oh, why do you feel that way? Okay. And then based on your needs, where do you feel like we should be priced? I like to have my window. right? So if it's 300,000, it's 3 to 350, I'm going to run a cost sheet at 300, maybe 315 and 325, right? Or did I say 350? I meant 325. So I'm going to run that cost sheet in that window. And then my goal is, if I want them to price it at 315, it's a really beautiful thing when they are the ones that say, well, how about 315? Great. That's exactly what I was thinking, right? But we have to allow them to discover that and walk through the comps with them and talk to them about it. Look at pictures, pull up your laptop and get into the MLS and look at the pictures so that they can see that. And in some cases, if they're really stubborn, if you can, go take them to the house. If it's an active comp, go take them to it, so that they can actually see the property, because, sometimes pictures, don't do the house justice, right? So if they actually get in and look at it, that's been a strategy as well. Page 30. So an ounce of prevention. So we want to eliminate the remorse. This script says that, so how would you feel if we sold your home tomorrow? I would feel like we priced it too low. So then we want to go deeper. May I ask you why you would feel that way? Is your goal to get your needs met within your designated time frame? Would you agree that pricing your home at the appropriate price entry point increases the odds of getting one or more offers within your designated time frame? And then, would you feel your needs were any less satisfied if the offer came in on the first day as opposed to the 60th day? And trust me, they really don't want their house on the market 60 days if they can help it. So I guess the point is that all the research we've just analyzed ensures us of the most appropriate price entry point. We really shouldn't care if the right person sees it. We only care as long as they see it within your designated time frame. So someone who is ready, willing, and able to pay X dollars for your home, sees it on the first day it's on the market, we should expect an offer. Wouldn't you agree? And we really can't control when the right person sees it. We can only control if they see it. So if the right person sees it on the first day, that is in no way means we priced the home too low. It simply validates the fact we priced it just right. Doesn't that make sense? So I love that, right? We can't control when they see it. We can only control if they see it. I have an affirmation I give every person I work with. So if it's a buyer, right house, right price, right time. If it's a seller, right buyer, right price, right time. And so anytime they start to spin out on me, just keep saying that affirmation, right? So that they stay in that high vibe energy. Okay, right buyer, right price, right time.
Sarah, I think people underestimate the power of those affirmations and what comes out of their mouths. I had a client who would just look at me and say, I just hate what's going on. I hate this property. I hate it. I looked at him and said, you have to stop saying that. Mm-hmm. You have to say, I love this. I'm grateful. Look at all the wonderful things that have happened, and I'll be delighted when it moves to the next person. And we worked with that for about 24 hours, and we got our offer a couple days later.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I know some of you may not even know about this, but
that was after 3 years.
3 years he was in that space.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a long time. So good for you. But the St. Joseph's thing, burying that in the yard, I know it might sound a little hoo-ha, but I have done it and it works. So there's something about them just energetically, doing that. So Roberta,
I have a crazy story on that really fast too.
And done it.
Yep.
On that one, I secretly went and buried one on my client's property because I didn't want them to think I was a nut. And I was over with her one day and she said, I don't want you to think I'm a nut or anything, but I went to the realtor store and I got a St. Joseph's and he's buried right over here. I said, well, this house is going to sell because I already secretly buried another one.
I thought the homeowner had to do it. I didn't think we could do it.
Oh no, I do it.
I do it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, saging a house can help too. So all those things, and if they are not ready to let go of a home, or they have some negativity about it, there is an energy out there that will keep that house from selling. So sometimes we have to have that conversation with them to let it go. I'm gonna skip around here a little bit because I only got a couple more minutes, and I want to get to the next what I think is one of the most brilliant parts of these classes. So the listing tool. So on page 32, so my role. So as what you can expect from me as your agent, right? It actually says your listing consultant. And so a lot of these are the fiduciary duties, which we don't talk a lot about, right? Which we should, getting into the fiduciary duties. And then let's see. Yeah, okay. I was just looking at my notes. And then the next section is what you expect of them. Okay. So, or I'm sorry, the marketing plan. So having the marketing plan, and this is pretty basic. I think, you know, if you're in SLAM right now, look at all those different 25 points we just talked about yesterday. And then looking at all the other things that you do. I don't feel like this is at all comprehensive of everything that we do. Last week I shared with you the Russo team, when Frank had his team, he had a document like 101 ways what we do when we put a home on the market. So pretty comprehensive. So if you guys want that, if you don't already have it, send me an email and I'll send that to you as well. So really going deep with this and showing them everything that you're doing. Okay. So to me, this is too basic. There's more that we do. So we need to add to it. And just like my roles and your expectations, have them sign it. Have them, you both sign it. So now we've layered up that commitment that this is what I'm going to do. And if they say, I don't want to do an open house, cross through it, right? We're not going to do an open house. I think that you should be doing open houses. But you know, I understand that some sellers don't want an open house and that's okay. That's their prerogative, but I think they're missing the boat on some additional exposure. So because we're Remax agents, I mean, you could talk about megaphone. You could talk about, you know, your databases, your websites, all of that stuff that would be put in here. Okay. So to me, this needs more than what's here. All right, let me get to just making sure that there's, oh yeah, here's one more part. So the listing tool. So what we expect of them. Okay. So having the house be ready to be shown. Okay. Completing repairs, keeping the yard mode. Leave for showings. Don't discuss any terms with the buyer or the agent. Don't call agents for feedback. Be honest on the disclosure. Keep the marketing stuff and you know, if you're putting a flyer box out, have them also market it to their homes. And then if you're leaving, let me know. If anything has changed, let me know. And then be brutally honest if I'm not keeping up with your expectations. What was the other thing one thing I would add to this is keep your utilities on. If the house is vacant, you know, we need to make sure your utilities are on and keep making your mortgage payment. There was a lawsuit many years ago where a seller sued and won on a house that went to foreclosure because they stopped making their house payments, and they won on the grounds that the realtor didn't, you know, tell them. And so those would be two things I would add to that: is keep the utilities on and keep making your house payment. Okay. And again, add a signature line to this, right? So these are things that your competition isn't doing. And I think these are the having the expectations of what you expect of them and what they can expect of you opens up more communication, right? And it manages the expectations, it sets the expectation, right? And then helps to manage it. And your competition isn't using something like this. And so if there's anything you take away from this class, is to implement something like this into your conversation. Okay. All right, let's see. So just a recap here, and then your last section of 39 to the end of the materials are just some additional tools and thank you note samples and stuff that you can send out. But just to recap, it's going to be tiny on there, but just to recap. So our success, so we want to ask the right questions. Okay. So before we ever go out to the house, we want to assemble our pre-listing questions. Okay. Then we want to do pricing. And I think if you're not spending at least an hour on comps, you're probably not doing enough research, right? And don't be afraid to go on a 2-part listing appointment. If a house has got a lot of upgrades or it's custom or there's just no comps, go look at the house first before you talk price. That way, you know, we can really dig into that, make sure we're representing it. Because if it's got a lot of upgrades, I need to be able to see it. And then I would always check all of those third-party iBuyer websites because you don't want to get sidelined to them saying, well, I went on Redfin and it said this, right? So I would check those as well. And I like asking the question too, which is not on that pre-listing question, is what do you think your house is worth? If they're a D personality, they're going to say to me, Donna, well, that's why I'm calling you. Okay, great. Now I know what I'm dealing with, right? But most people are going to have a sense of what they think their home is worth. Okay. Call to confirm the appointment or text to confirm the appointment via video. Prepare your listing agreement. Get your head in the right spot, right? Whatever that looks like. If it's the Rocky theme song or Eminem's Lose Yourself, whatever it is, get yourself in the right space so that when you get there, you nail it. Arrive on time. Offer to remove your shoes, right? Make sure that or carry booties with you. Move towards the kitchen. Request a tour of the home and make sure that you're building rapport with the Ford script, right? Family, occupation, recreation, dreams. And then when you get back, make sure you ask where to be seated. It shows a lot of respect for them. And then we want to explain what the win-win is, right? Set that up, tee it up for what's going to be the mutual expectations for a successful outcome. And then review the agenda, offer the confidentiality, help them uncover their needs and prioritize those, review the CMA. Depending on the person, if it's someone that's in my orbit, I might send the CMA to them. If it's someone I don't know, I'm not sending it because I don't want to if they're interviewing other agents, I don't want them to use my comps against me, okay? So we want to talk about the summary sheets in the MLS, review the sold, right? Review all of that data, and then talk about the appropriate price entry point. Verify that meets their needs, and then talk about remorse, right? Get in front of that, because if you talk about it ahead of time, we deal with it instead of it being an issue later. And then talk about the roles and expectations, and then your marketing plan. A gal yesterday in our slam class, she said, and she calls herself my home girl, which is like, it's such a cute play on being a home girl versus like how, selling people homes. Loved it. So anyway, she calls it her marketing strategy. So again, find sexy ways to say stuff that means the same thing, but it sounds new and different. And then talk about what they can expect from you. And then ask if that's everything, right? Did I cover all of your expectations? Did we talk about everything that you're concerned about? Talk about their fears, right? And the uncertainties. And then ask if they're okay with that. Is that fair? And then we want to confirm the value and then close for the appointment, or I'm sorry, close for the agreement. So I think if you guys, study the scripts, get really comfortable with pricing, I think that's something we all need to just become very, very strong pricing strategists right now. Not that that's never been important, but I think it's really important right now. So any questions, comments, thoughts? All right, Donna.
Can you just send me the information, this packet?
You didn't get it from last week?
This was in there? I thought it was the other two.
It's all one PDF. So, but I can send it to you again. I'll forward it to you. That's fine. If you guys want those additional things, I don't remember what I said. There was two. One was the Russo team, and I don't remember what the other one was, but I'm happy to send that to you. And Donna, I'll forward that to you. Thursday is our last hour that we're going to work on business plans for October. So come join me. I know last week my Zoom was jacked, so we're all back in business. So we'll be doing that on Thursday. And then we got the pumpkin carving contest on Friday. So even if you're not participating, come, because it's a real good fun time. So, all right. Anything else before we wrap for today? Everybody good?
Thank you.
I do have it, Sarah. I have it.
You do? Okay, awesome. All right. Well, if you guys need anything, please reach out. But otherwise, I will see you on Friday for some fun competition.
Bring it on.
Yeah, Monica, she's going to win. So she always wins. So.
All right, guys. Have a great day.
What'd you say, Roberta? You're muted.
You're muted.
I told Nate yesterday we decided to not play, so don't worry about Monica.
All right. Well, you guys have a great day. Okay. I'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.